Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm releasing part 2 to something I released earlier this year, chronicling my adventures in Japan with my wife. Now we actually traveled there back in 2023, so this is quite delayed in getting this out, but these videos take a tremendous amount of time to put together. But it was such a joy to go back through this footage and clip it and pull it together and edit it for this part 2. Now this is the second week that we spent in Japan, and I can't emphasize enough that you should go back and watch part 1 because this is going to pick up exactly where we left off in week 1. And in that first week, we spent time in Osaka, Kyoto, and Nara. So we went to Nara Park where we got to see the sacred deer. We went to Osaka Castle and one of the best aquariums I've ever been in my life while we were in Osaka. And we also saw the Fushi Inari Shrine in Kyoto. Ate a ton of amazing and delicious food, did game shopping, crane games. There's so much captured in that first video, and I would actually say there's quite a bit more captured in the first week than you'll see in this second week. We were kind of a little burnt out and tired, and certainly the jet lag was catching up with us in week 2, but this is when we were in Tokyo. We went to Akihabara and did even more game shopping, and I'll also say that the city life got the best of us, so we snuck away unplanned and went to a little city called Nikko. So all of that is captured here in part 2, and there's also a lot of more game shopping in here as well. So cozy up on the couch, grab a warm beverage, and if you have plans to travel to Japan in the near future, grab a pen and paper so you can make note of hopefully some awesome things to do while you're there. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so as a reminder for those that watched part 1 or for those that did not, we spent the final day of our first week in a little city called Utsunomiya. So we spent a lot of time wandering the city, eating good food, and eventually making our way to a book off to do some game shopping. This is actually the book off where I bought the majority of the stuff that I got on the trip. And then later that evening, we ended up having a delicious meal with some old co-workers of Lauren's when she used to work for a Japanese manufacturing company. So really cool to have an opportunity to meet them and enjoy some delicious food. But the following day, we made our way back to Tokyo. And this is just a clip of Tokyo Station. You can see Lauren kind of trying to make her way back there with quite a bit of foot traffic. It can get quite chaotic. So you definitely have to move fast, keep moving forward, never stop in Tokyo Station. Just always keep moving forward. Now, after a few train rides, we arrived in Shinjuku in Tokyo. And yes, you're not mistaken, that is Godzilla's head. This is the Godizilla Hotel in Shinjuku. My wife surprised me and didn't tell me that we'd be staying here. And my goodness, was it pretty dang cool, especially if you are a big fan of the Godzilla films. They had this amazing replica head outside of the building that you can see while wandering the streets. It lights up and roars at night, which is super cool. And then when you go into the hotel lobby, you see all of the film posters here displayed. And then they also have a replica of a city with a life-size Godzilla standing there as well. And you can, of course, take photographs with him, which was, you kind of had to wait in line. Everyone that was staying there definitely wanted to do that. But shortly after this, we checked into our hotel, definitely pretty high up, and got a nice view of the city before figuring out what we wanted to do for the remainder of the 8th day of our trip, which at this point, I definitely wanted to go game shopping. And as you can imagine, when you're in Tokyo, when you're near Akihabara, that's exactly what you want to do. And so we started making our way down the street and saw one of many of these shopping malls. They're kind of multi-leveled with all kinds of stuff, manga, games, figures, memorabilia, and also things that you probably have to be a certain age to be able to buy, but we won't really be getting into that or showing much of it here in the video. And I'm probably not even going to do a ton of commentary over all of this because I have a tremendous amount of footage of these figures. Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, One Piece, Monster Hunter, Sailor Moon, you name it, I saw it. There was a figure for it, but I didn't buy anything here because they tended to be kind of pricey, and I already kind of cleaned up at a book off in Utsunomiya when it came to figures and games for that matter. So I figured, you know what? I'm just going to take a lot of pictures, take a lot of videos, enjoy the sights, because there were some really, really pretty neat figures that I just don't think you can buy anything like this anywhere else in the world. So really cool stuff. And I overheard someone else talking in English that these cabinets tend to be themed around a particular series. And normally you have people with quite a bit more money in their pockets than I do kind of bidding, and they auction these things off, and someone tends to get the entire cabinet as opposed to buying one of these figures individually. So someone can, of course, correct me if I'm wrong. That's much more well-versed in figure shopping in Japan, but that's what I overheard, and that's the story that I'm sticking to, because I can't imagine buying an entire one of these cabinets when some of them are going for hundreds, if not over $1,000 in some cases. Next up, we went to a store that I had been dreaming about going to for years, which was Super Potato. Walking up these stairs, very tight quarters by the way, and seeing all of these game posters all over the walls was such a unique experience. But I really do have to emphasize here that I think the novelty of going here far exceeded the actual shopping and buying experience. And maybe this is just my own, but buying games in Tokyo, and especially in the Akihabara, Super Potato type places, can be a real challenge just given how pricey some of the games are. I mean, there were instances where I saw the exact version and copy of a game outside of Tokyo going for a tenth of the price that it was going for here at Super Potato. So probably not telling you things you don't already know, but it's something to be mindful of, maybe to temper your expectations when going into some of these stores. If you are hoping to go in and buy tons of games for pennies on the dollar, probably not going to happen. But it's still an incredible time and experience going in these very, very small stores. Super Potatoes, they can be like 6 stories high, so plenty of things to browse and see. And I mean, when are you going to go into a 7-story building full of retro video games, most of which are still complete in the box? So still an incredible time in a place I had a lot of fun browsing, taking photos and videos, but not a place I bought many games. Now the shopping continued well into the next day, but we needed to get away from the more tourist-heavy places and kind of escape to what we had found success in the first week. So we found a book off in Tokyo, and I ended up getting a number of games here, which I won't capture necessarily. You can go look at my pickups video, but you can see here Dragon Quest V. Look at that box art for about 22 bucks given the conversion rate. Excellent stuff. A lot of stuff on modern consoles, a ton of retro stuff. If you've been to Half Price Books here in the States, they had like all of these discount carts like you would see in a Half Price Books, and you're going to find games for $5 or less, whether it's in the cart. In some cases, you're going to find Super Famicom and even Game Boy Color stuff in the box for 10, 15 bucks or less. So really great opportunity to clean up on that kind of stuff for sure. But it's always just so fascinating to look at the box art. You know, you see Kingdom Hearts and things like that there, but just to see the differences in the North American box art versus the Japanese box art, I think probably more often than not, I prefer the Japanese box art, but it's, again, just very unique and interesting to see how the box art differs from one region to the next. But I picked up a number of Super Famicom, I think a few N64 games, and maybe a PS3 copy of Final Fantasy XIII for one of my good friends while we were here. But more than anything, when you go into Book Off, it's just fun to browse, and also really interesting to see a number of people seemingly on lunch breaks given the time of day, browsing Book Off, picking up manga, video games, soundtracks, whatever it might be. Just a completely different world than here in the States, and you love to see it. Next up, we went to the Tokyo Skytree, which was quite a hike to get to from where we were at, but nice day for a walk given the overcast weather, and there is just plenty of shopping to be done around and inside the Tokyo Skytree, as we'll see here shortly. Just a lot of neat shops. One of which is the Pokemon Center. So cool walking in and seeing Rayquaza and Pikachu there, not to mention all of the plushies that were on display. If you have a favorite Pokemon, chances are it was there and you could buy it in plush form. They also had music from all of the different Pokemon games playing overhead, so just a rush of nostalgia if you're a longtime Pokemon fan like myself, and just seeing all the different figures and also all of the younger folks and older folks just running around the store with childlike excitement, picking up their favorite Pokemon plush or action figure and rushing to the cash register to buy it. And then right across the way from the Pokemon Center was the Kirby Cafe. If you watched my pickups video, you saw the little Kirby plushies that I picked up from there. But then we made our way to the Studio Ghibli store, which also, similar to the Pokemon Center, was so neat to walk through with all the Ghibli music playing overhead. Some of the coolest merchandise you could ever imagine. Stills and cells and posters from all of the Ghibli films. Just a lot of really cool stuff. But naturally, we had to take some goofy photographs in front of the life-size Totoro there, which was super cool, and just all kinds of neat plushies and merchandise littered around the store as well. After all the shopping, we were pretty hungry, pretty parched, so we walked into this place where we could get a nice cold beverage and some snacks as well. And like I said in the first video, it's just so wild how inexpensive food and drinks are in Japan. But later that evening, we made our way back to the hotel, but not before we snuck in some crane games. And I was a little less fortunate the second week than I was the first, but still had to try my hand at some more crane games.
Yeah, last one. This is it, right here. Come on, come on.
After some failed attempts at crane games, we actually went back to our room, ordered a pizza and some wings, and watched the Survivor finale. Yes, I'm a huge Survivor fan. I've actually auditioned to be on the show multiple times, so maybe you'll see me on Survivor at some point in the future. But here's also just an overview of some of the things that we had purchased over the course of our trip so far, which you can see quite a bit of some pretty fun stuff. I think I mentioned it earlier in the video, but Lauren and I are not the biggest city people, and to go from Osaka and Kyoto to Shinjuku was a little overwhelming, and so we made our way kind of in an impromptu fashion to a little city called Nikko, which is in the mountains north of Tokyo. There's a great national park here that Lauren had been to before when she was still working for a Japanese manufacturing company. And so we kind of booked a hotel last minute. We double booked on hotels because we still had our hotel in Shinjuku, but we just needed to kind of escape the noise, get to somewhere a little bit quieter, a little bit more peaceful. We even found a book off in this city, so we got some game shopping in. But one of our favorite moments throughout the entire trip was when it was raining. We needed to kind of just escape the rain for a few minutes, and we stumbled into this coffee shop where this older woman who was probably in her 70s or 80s came over to greet us, and she made coffee, treated us to a complimentary snack, and just had this really peaceful, soft piano music playing. There was no one else in this building with us. It was just us, and we ended up calling her Grandma Nikko, not to her face, but just kind of a way to cement this memory that ended up becoming one of our favorite memories on the trip, because it was something that we didn't anticipate or plan on doing. We just saw this very small building. We saw coffee advertised on the front. We went in, we were greeted by this woman, and she treated us to a drip coffee, a little snack, and she had this fire going. It was just a really peaceful kind of serenity moment of the trip. It's tough to put into words really, but as fun as it was to go game shopping and have all the delicious food in Japan, it was this moment that kind of tended to be a top 3 when we look back on all of the great things we did while we were there. But later that evening, we found a restaurant near our hotel, and you had these like little private booths and a little iPad screen that you could order food and drinks on. So you can see Lauren's drinking a nice little, I think, highball whiskey there. And look at that guy. He's just having a great time, and so were we. Ate some delicious gyoza that was still kind of cooking on that skillet. I think we started the meal with some edamame, and I believe ended it with some sushi. But then we made our way to this hotel at the very end of the street in Nikko, and it's actually the oldest Western-style hotel in Japan. Was established in 1873 and really has kind of this old lodge-style ambience to it, as we'll get into, and you see some of these photographs here. But this was us at the very late of night walking up to the hotel. We had to kind of trek up this giant hill, and they had this old-timey car outside of the hotel, and then naturally had to snap a photo of Lauren just before going in and checking into the hotel. But Albert Einstein and Helen Keller even stayed here way back when, and it almost has kind of some horror movie vibes, especially after checking in, walking up the steps, and going through these like very long, narrow hallways, some of which the overhead lights had actually died out. And then you see that photograph on the far right, just steps leading down to who knows where. But not trying to be disrespectful of the hotel. I think there's a lot of rich history here. Clearly some very prominent, well-respected people had stayed there. And it was kind of just an honor to be able to get that skeleton key, get into our room, and stay there for the night before heading to the Nikko National Park the following day. But they also had some complimentary kimonos there, so we had to put those on, and there was this giant mirror in one of the hallways, and we had to also take a photo there to really capture that moment. I think it was the only time while we were in Japan when we had an opportunity to wear a kimono, and when in Japan, why not? We woke up the following morning and made our way to Nikko National Park, which is almost a stone's throw from our hotel. Picture perfect day as we made our way there. And just a really nice, serene hiking opportunity, and a place that Lauren had already been before. It's considered one of the most beautiful parks in Japan. Pretty popular tourist destination, but if you get there early, not going to run into too many people. And just these striking, massive trees reminded me as if we were on the West Coast in a place like Oregon or certain places in Canada. Just massive trees in this very vast forest, and some really interesting Buddhist temples as well. And towards the tail end here, after I share some of these photos, there was a quick video that I took of these monks banging this massive bell. Pretty cool moment, and you really can't hear anything else in the video. No talking, no walking, just this really interesting ceremony that was going on that we were able to capture on camera. After a beautiful day of hiking in Nikko National Park, we ended up making our way back to Tokyo, but on the train ride, I was talking to Lauren and telling her how much I regretted not cleaning up and buying more stuff at that book off in Utsunomiya. So she's like, you know what? It's on the way. Let's stop. So God bless Lauren for humoring me and allowing us to get off the train, make the trek back to this book off, and doing a tremendous amount of shopping. This is actually when I bought probably 80% of the stuff that you saw in my pickups video. A lot of the Dragon Ball Z figures I bought here. N64 stuff, a ton of boxed Super Famicom games, and some loose Super Famicom carts as well. But wanted to make sure that I highlighted some of this game footage because, and I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but there truly is nothing like going into these stores and seeing all of these well-kept, well-maintained, very good condition in most cases, boxed copies of retro games from 20 to 30 years ago. And more often than not, a lot of these games were going for very, very cheap, which is why I wanted to get the majority of my game shopping done at this particular book-off in Utsunomiya. But all good game shopping must come to an end, and eventually we grabbed lunch in Utsunomiya before getting back on the train and heading back to Tokyo. In here you have the infamous cat screen. My camera wasn't doing a great job of capturing it. I'm not sure what was going on there, but still pretty cool to get a look at the city life. And once we got back near our hotel to drop off our bags and get a change of clothes, I finally tried my hand at one of the gacha machines, so I'll go ahead and play that now.
What'd you get?
I got a traditional little slime guy. Hold on. It's gonna take a second to open.
They really taped him. Oh,
I got a
the
blue
best
slime!
one.
Yes. Oh my gosh, literally the one I wanted. You can't go wrong with a little blue
Oh,
slime.
look how cute he is. I love it. Happy?
I'm happy.
That evening we had zero plans of what we wanted to do or where we wanted to eat, so we literally just left our hotel, started walking down the street, and just whatever caught our eye, that's what we did. Naturally saw another book off, so had to stop in there and just browse. Didn't really buy anything that I can remember from this book off or really any of our shopping in Tokyo. It was more than anything just an opportunity to continue to browse and experience more of all of the wonderful game shopping in Japan and find some obscure, strange games that I would never find anywhere else but Japan. And of course, a colossal ton of Pokemon merchandise, lots of plushies, figures, and everything in between. And it was tempting to get some of these, but at this point, we had so many plushies from our Crane game winnings, it was probably best that I held off on buying more stuff. But at this point, it had gotten pretty late at night, so we started to make our way closer back to our hotel to try and find a place to eat that evening. And this ended up becoming one of, if not the most memorable nights of the trip. We ended up sitting in the second story of this restaurant, and just behind Lauren, there was this group of men who clearly had just wrapped up at work and were grabbing dinner for the evening. Now, this is Lauren navigating the menu screen where you can order food and drinks, but shortly you'll see a photo where my eventual friend is captured. Lauren and I were having this great time eating tons of food, just the ambience of everyone else around us, talking loudly, just enjoying the company of their friends or coworkers. We had a few drinks, and then this group of men behind Lauren had this ceremonial bow. They said something in Japanese to kind of say goodbye to each other. And then after that, this man kind of locked eyes with me at that table. He got super excited, ran over to me, and he could only say a few words in English. He asked where I lived. Naturally, I said the United States. And he went, "Oh, California." And I said, no, not California. And so then he went, "Oh, New York City." And I was like, yes, both. Exactly. Yes, that's where I live. But he never seemed to quite understand. But that didn't matter at all. This man and I had a full-blown conversation without being able to understand a single word the other person was saying outside of California, the United States, and New York. We were smiling ear to ear, laughing, and eventually took these photos to capture the moment. It was such a memorable experience, definitely one of my absolute favorites of the trip. The following day, we had a pretty packed agenda, visiting the Tokyo Starbucks Roastery and eventually making our way to Shibuya Crossing. But first up was the Tokyo Roastery, and on our walk there, we saw this building that was just overgrown with all kinds of vegetation. Had to take a quick video. It almost looked like something from The Last of Us or some zombie apocalypse type movie, but Eventually, we made our way to the Starbucks Roastery, and if you're not familiar, there's only 6 of these in the world: Seattle, Shanghai, Milan, New York City, Chicago, and here in Tokyo. And it's a very immersive experience where they make the coffee. They make Starbucks coffee right in front of you with these giant vats full of the beans. And there's, of course, a coffee bar right in the middle where you can order a hot or cold beverage of your choosing, a deli sandwich, or a pastry. Just really neat, especially if you are a fan of tea or coffee. I'd highly recommend going. It's a very thoughtfully designed environment, and just how you make your way around this building is pretty neat. And who doesn't love sipping on a coffee looking out into the city of Tokyo? Next up, we made our way to Shibuya Crossing, which is the world's busiest pedestrian crossing with as many as 3,000 people crossing at any given time. So I want to make sure you can kind of put context to just how busy it is. We have a video here that I'm going to play, and I have the audio on, so just so you can get a sense for how busy Shibuya Crossing really is. Now, just next to Shibuya Crossing is a statue of a dog that many people would probably walk by and not think anything of, but I think it's important to have the historical context of this beautiful dog named Hachikō, who was born in 1923, was a purebred Akita dog and adopted by a professor in agricultural science at the University of Tokyo in Japan, known as Professor Ueno. He named this dog puppy Hachi when he adopted him back in 1923, and Hachi meant the number 8 in Japanese. Now, as Hachi grew older, he started to see his owner off to work in the morning at the Shibuya train station in central Tokyo, and then went to pick him up at the station in the afternoon when he returned from work. But unfortunately, one day, Professor Ueno suffered from a cerebral hemorrhage and died suddenly and unexpectedly while at work. He was only 53 years old. And at the time, Hachi had only been with Professor Ueno for about a year and 4 months to that point. So Hachi moved in with a former gardener of the Ueno family, and throughout the rest of his 10-year-long life, he kept going back to the Shibuya train station every afternoon, precisely when the train was due to enter the station. He sat there for hours patiently waiting for the return of his beloved owner, who sadly never came back. Now, it's also unfortunate to know that people didn't always treat Hachi nicely as he lingered around the station. There are plenty of stories of him being beaten and bullied by pedestrians and staff at the train station, but that all changed when he appeared in the newspaper Japanese Daily one day describing why Hachikō kept returning to the station. So after that, he essentially became a Japanese celebrity. A statue was made in 1934 honoring this sacred and now beloved dog. He did end up passing away a year later in 1935, but the statue remains there today, and he's still revered as a symbol of love, devotion, and loyalty. Now, after seeing Shibuya Crossing and the Hachikō statue, plus some miscellaneous shopping, we ended up going back to Ueno Station and heading back to our hotel. I'm sure we got some dinner that night, but I don't have it captured, unfortunately. But this takes us also, unfortunately, to our final day in Japan before heading home. And this final day could probably be best characterized as just a day to do some last-minute cleanup shopping, get some gifts for folks, not before getting a coffee, of course, to start the day, and then, of course, stopping into any game shop we saw throughout the day. Don't think I bought anything else at this point in the trip. Maybe a soundtrack or two, as we'll see here a little bit deeper into this footage. But Needed to kind of get my last minute fix, just seeing all of this wonderful stuff on display, because I knew it's probably going to be quite some time before I'm ever back in Japan. And as anyone in the States knows, we just don't really have stores like this. Yes, as you can see here, they had massive video game soundtrack sections. There's one of my personal favorites, Final Fantasy 15. Hey, you can knock the game all you want, but great music in that game from Yoko Shimomura and plenty of other great artists. Then we also have Final Fantasy 13 there, another favorite soundtrack of mine. I already have it though, so I didn't pick it up, but kind of regretting not getting that Final Fantasy 15, especially since it was about $10 to $12. And then also this one, the Alpha Sapphire Omega Ruby soundtrack, plus the Let's Go Pikachu one. Kind of regret not picking that up. Next up, we went to this really interesting store that had tons of collectibles, figures, plushies, anything you can think of. They probably had, not so much on the video game side of things, but they also had these like little gacha figures. So you see all these Pokemon here. You could grab one of these boxes for probably, I don't know, $8 to $10. I can't really remember how expensive they were. And you never knew what you were getting. And so I ended up getting a Kirby kind of gacha figure like that. But that sense of anticipation, not knowing what you were going to open up, was always pretty exciting. So wish I would have gotten at least one of the Pokemon ones. But also wish I would have gotten more Dragon Quest merchandise. I saw this walking up the steps because this place was also like, I don't know, 7 to 8 stories high. And look at all of those really neat Dragon Quest collectibles stuff. I just don't think you'll find anywhere else in the world. And then several of these really neat little Ghibli dioramas. Looking back on this video now, I'm like, gotta go back to Japan. There's just so much stuff that I didn't get. But even looking at it from afar, still exciting. And I'm kind of running out of room in the game room as it is, so I don't really know if I need any of this stuff, right? But grabbing one of these things for $20, I'm sure we could have found a room for one of these little Ghibli dioramas. Also ran into a Gremlins backpack, plus little Gizmo plushies. Had to snap a quick video of that. For those that are not following Gizmo's Game Room on Instagram, you should be. It's time for my wife to revive the gaming Instagram, all right? This is her reminder. Once we left that store, we stopped in and got some conveyor belt sushi, which, oh my goodness, I think we ate 10 plates of sushi at least, and we got out of there for less than $15. You really can't beat it. And then as we were kind of making our way back to our hotel, we saw this Disney store. And if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of Disney, so we had to stop in and check it out. And naturally, they had all of your favorite Disney music playing overhead. They had tons of little plushies, including this ridiculously cute little Donald Duck in a rain jacket, which we ended up picking that up. And now I kind of wish we would have gotten something like this for my daughter, especially since her nursery is Winnie the Pooh themed. But these plushies will just melt your heart looking at them. But speaking of hearts, they have some Kingdom Hearts merch as well, and this stuff was stupidly expensive. Would have loved to have gotten one of these little collections of things, but was kind of out of my price range, unfortunately. And then on the second floor, they also had tons of these little figures. These are similar to the ones I showed earlier, those little mystery ones that you can get in a box. And then they had other ones that were far more expensive that were themed after individual movies. And at this point, we kind of fast forward later into the evening when we were looking for some final places to eat, and we wanted to make multiple stops, but we also just wanted to take in this scenery, this feeling of walking down these long strips with plenty of places to choose from, knowing that this was our final night to take it all in. We were able to sneak into this very crowded restaurant and get some snacks, have a few drinks before having our main course at a different place, but look at that smile, look at that face. That is the face of someone who just spent 2 of the best weeks of their entire life in a country they've been dreaming about going to for well over 15 years, but we made our way to our favorite ramen restaurant in the evening before going back to our hotel, so it was nice to have another giant bowl of ramen, and that bowl was about $8, if you can believe it. Once we wrapped up that meal, we took a few more videos of the nightlife outside of our hotel and just walking around kind of the surrounding area. And it was just an opportunity for us to reflect about the past 2 weeks, how much we had experienced, what we had seen, the foods we had eaten, the number of times we got lost throughout the train stations, but still ended up finding our way to our destination. What an incredible journey these past 2 weeks have truly been for Lauren and I. And a trip we will absolutely take again. But as we come to the tail end of the video here, I have one final little crane game video of Lauren trying to win this Snoopy plush for my dad. So we'll go ahead and see if she wins it here. Oh, she's so close. Let's see. Fingers crossed. The sense of anticipation's killing us. Oh, just dropped, unfortunately. But it was time for us to embrace the inevitable and head back to our hotel. And because we stayed at the Godizilla Hotel, I had to stay out for the final night to make sure that I captured him roaring and blowing out steam. So we'll go ahead and watch that, and then we'll make our way to the airport. We really did have a fantastic final night, but all good things must come to an end, and that includes our 2-week trip in Japan. Beautiful morning to wake up to, so no real issues getting on the train, making our way to the airport here, and we got there super early, as you can see, so not many people around. We cleared security super quickly, and were able to get on the plane, get settled, prep a movie, and prepare for the flight ahead. And then at some point during the flight, we were treated to this beautiful sunrise. Don't look directly in the sun, okay? It's not good for you. Really great to see this. I think the pilot actually came over the intercom to let everyone know, like, hey, great chance to look out to your left and see this beautiful sunrise. But that is a wrap as we come to a close with these Adventures in Japan videos. I first just want to thank you for watching, especially if you stuck around for parts 1 and 2. These 2 weeks with Lauren were genuinely 2 of the best weeks of my life, and we wanted to share that experience with our friends and family, as well as any folks planning to travel to Japan in the future. So I hope these videos gave you some ideas for if you do travel to Japan, or maybe these videos just inspired you to think about planning that next adventure. I cannot emphasize enough how special and exciting it is to immerse yourself in a different country and culture, get out of your comfort zone, try new foods, talk to the locals, even if you can't always understand one another, and create memories you will never forget, especially when experienced with your best friend. Now, I have one final video to play as we roll out of here, but I want to thank you all once again so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.